In addition to the European Union's diplomatic escalation against Iran, the United States is upping the pressure. President Donald Trump has warned Tehran it faces yet another military attack if it does not accept a new nuclear deal. Trump is sending massive firepower to the Middle East and says any attack on Iran would be much worse than those the US carried out last year. Giorgio Cafiero is CEO of the geopolitical risk consultancy Gulf State Analytics in Washington, D.C. The US has built up a massive military presence in the Middle East. Iran has warned it will respond instantly if it's attacked. What do you see happening?
Yeah, thank you. Great to be back on your network. You know, this can obviously evolve in different ways. I think it's really clear that what Trump sees is an Iran that is very weak, both internally in light of everything that's gone on in the country since December with the protests. Also throughout the region, Iran has a much weaker hand compared to a year and a half ago. And these are circumstances that I think Trump and those around him believe can result in the U.S. somewhat easily pressuring Iran to make huge concessions, really catering to maximalist demands set forth by the White House. If Trump will have any success in sort of bullying Iran into essentially committing to zero enrichment, giving up its ballistic missile program, cutting off ties with non-state actors throughout the region that Tehran has been backing for many years, that I have a difficult time imagining. I think probably what we're going to see is maximum pressure being met with maximum resistance. This has been how things have evolved for many years, and I think that we're going to see things continue to move in that direction. Will the U.S. ultimately hit Iran? I think that's very possible, but that might be the beginning of a very messy conflict that's easy for the U.S. to start, but very difficult for the U.S. to wrap up in any sort of way that's favorable to U.S. interests.
Does the US, or how does the US see the EU's move to put the Iranian Revolutionary Guards on their terror list?
Well, I think obviously the Trump administration and the foreign policy establishment here in Washington are grateful to see greater U.S.-European alignment when it comes to Iran. I really think that the situation in Ukraine with the Russian invasion that began almost 4 years ago and the role that Iran has played in supporting Russia in that conflict has done a lot to push the Europeans more toward the hawkish American stance on Iran. We've seen, though, for quite some time that the Europeans have been moving away from diplomacy, moving more toward Trump and, by extension, Netanyahu's hawkish postures toward Iran.
Now, if Iran were to agree to scaling back its nuclear program, would that prevent the conflict or any conflict?
Well, the premise of that question is that Iran would agree to zero enrichment. I do not see that happening. Now, would Iran entering into talks with the United States possibly serve to avert some sort of a conflict? Well, you know, history is any guide. The U.S.-Israeli alliance has no problem attacking Iran amid negotiations. The world witnessed that back in June of last year. So that leads me to question to what extent Iran would really see much utility in sitting down at the negotiating table with the United States while it's under this kind of pressure. Obviously, Turkey, Qatar, and Oman are working very hard to try to take advantage of the small amount of space that exists for diplomacy to try to get some sort of constructive talks going on. But when you look at the positions of the Trump administration and you look at the positions of the supreme leader of Iran, I have a really difficult time imagining some sort of a diplomatic breakthrough in upcoming hours, days, or weeks that could defuse the tensions. I'd like to be proven wrong, but I'm not very optimistic about the potential for diplomacy at this point.
Okay, and just briefly, the Gulf states, how do you see their position? For example, Riyadh isn't allowing its airspace to be used for military action against Tehran.
From the perspective of the GCC states, the possibility of a full-fledged U.S.-Iran war is extremely nightmarish. When we look at what the leadership in Saudi Arabia and other GCC states want for the region. We need to understand their vision for stability in the neighborhood. They're trying to develop and diversify their economies away from oil. They want to attract massive amounts of foreign investment. They want to bring in tourists. They want to bring in a lot more business, make their cities, their ports, huge hubs for global commerce. None of that's going to be possible if there's a chaotic war taking place in the Gulf. We saw last year that the conflict with Iran during the 12-day war, it spilled into Qatar. And there's a huge risk of GCC states becoming collateral damage in such a conflict. The last thing they want is for the U.S. or Israel to start bombing Iran. What the GCC states want is diplomacy right now.
Many thanks for your insights, Giorgio Cafiero of Gulf State Analytics.
Good to be with you.